Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My presentation is on the congenital vertical talus, and this is webinar series from Dr. Ziauddin University, Clifton campus. And my objective today will be pathoanatomy of congenital vertical talus, clinical presentation, radiological evaluation, and treatment modalities. I will more concentrate on the treatment modalities and the pathoanatomy. Congenital vertical talus, there are several synonymous terminology. Most common terminology generally used is the rocker bottom foot. And this rocker bottom foot, if you say, this discriminates from the flat foot, which is more common in the younger age groups. And other terminology also used as a congenital convex pes valgus, talipes, convex pes valgus. 50% of congenital vertical talus are idiopathic, and 50% of them are associated with other diseases, maybe neurogenic disorder, maybe arthrogryposis congenita. There is dorsolateral dislocation of the talocalcaneonavicular joint, which usually called a mid-tarsal joint, and navicular is dislocated dorsally and talar head is dislocated downward. Therefore, talus is oriented vertically, leading to the fixed contracture of the hind foot and rocker bottom deformity. There is equinus here because of the verticality of the talus and the calcaneum. Talus head is and the neck are flattened because of the dislocation of the navicular over to the talus, and that is also deviated medially in plantarward, which is usually felt by the finger, and it produces a rocker bottom type of deformity, which you can see here. The calcaneum is also plantar flexed but externally rotated, and navicular is displaced dorsally and laterally, and it is also hypoplastic, and cuboid is deformed and laterally deviated, and it produces a reverse deformity of the club foot, and dorsolateral subluxation and dislocation of the calcaneocuboid joint, and it produces usually lengthening on the medial side and shortening on the lateral side, and the equinus contracture, which is mostly because of the orientation of the talus, which is mostly vertical and failed on the plantar surface. So here I can say the elongation of medial structures are the tendons, flexor digitorum and flexor hallucis longus. They are elongated as they are only mostly on the medial side. Along with that, there is calcaneonavicular ligaments and the anterior fibers of the deltoid ligament, which are elongated, while dorsolateral structures and tendoachilles, including peroneal tendon, extensor hallucis brevis, peroneus longus, peroneus tertius, and anterior tibialis anterior, they are contracted, they are dorsolateral structures, and along with that there is a calcaneofibular ligament, talonavicular ligaments, and the capsule of ankle and subtalar joints. They are on the lateral side and they are contracted. Here I can show the posterior and medial surface of the foot, where you will find the Achilles tendon is shortened and the anteriorly subluxated tibialis posterior, and the peroneus tertius and the peronei, they are contracted on the they are lengthened on the medial side, and the vascular supply of the is dominated by dorsalis pediis and anterior tibial artery, whereas they are deficient by the posterior tibial artery. Here presentation usually produce an abduction and dorsiflexion of the foot, and hind foot is in equinus in the valgus position, while the plantar surface looks a convex like a rocker bottom deformity. Then there are deep crease on the anterolateral aspect of the foot. You will find a deep crease in the club foot. It is on the medial side, where in the vertical talus it is a deep crease on the lateral side, and the foot is everted in valgus and externally rotated position. We can generally say there is elongation of medial column and shortening of the lateral column. There is shortening of the lateral column, and there is an elongation of the medial column. If you keep this in the mind, along with the equinus contracture, it will be easy for you to do for the treatment purpose. And radiological evaluation, when you find, you have to know and you have to see there is a normal foot here, there, and this is abnormal foot. Here is the vertical talus, which is very easily seen, which is vertically located, and calcaneum is externally rotated and shortened, and the naviculus is dorsally dislocated along with the flattening of the talus. And we can draw a certain lines. In normal foot, the axis of the talus remain lower. Long axis of the first metatarsal passes plantarward to the long axis of the talus. So here tells you there is axis of the first meta, which is lower than the talus axis. But in the vertical talus, the axis of the talus remain lower than the first metatarsal. The long axis of the first metatarsal remains dorsal to the long axis of the talus because of the dislocation dorsolaterally. This indicates the dislocation of midfoot and the forefoot, which is dorsolateral side. So again, I can repeat that axis of the talus is lower than the axis of the first foot. Then if there are a special view to diagnose the vertical talus and some physiological, or you would say oblique talus deformity. Maximum plantar flexion view demonstrates the irreducibility of the talonavicular joint. Navicular cannot be reduced on the talus in the vertical congenital vertical talus. If you draw a line through axis of the talus, it passes plantarward to the first axis of the metatarsus. Normally, this is higher and this is lower. But if you draw an axis of the talus and the calcaneum, both are lower, but they are not matching. And again, you can see even when you do plantar flexion, it will not reduce. This is the dorsal normal position of the vertical talus. Axis is lower than the low axis of the first metatarsal. So if you do the plantar flexion view, they do not match, do not reduce. Normally, this axis should be lower than the axis of the talus. So this will describe the oblique talus and the flexus type of deformity and the rigid type of deformity of vertical talus. Again, you see here the lateral plantar flexion radiograph show a persistent dorsal translation of the forefoot and the hind foot. So lateral dorsiflexion radiograph, the same foot, when done, it shows a persistent plantar flexion of the talus and the calcaneum. This is the plantar flexion view, and this is the normal view which we are taking, even you can say the dorsiflexion view. So this indicates about the irreducibility of talonavicular joint, which is dorsolaterally dislocated. So other parameters in radiological is the kite angle. Kite angle is the talocalcaneal angle. The anterior mid-tarsal line passes through or just medial to the base of the first metatarsal. So if you draw a axis of the mid-talar line, this is the talar line, is passes through the base of the first metatarsal. And other line is mid-calcaneal line, which should pass through the base of the fourth metatarsal. This is the calcaneal, mid-calcaneal line. It should pass through the base of the fourth metatarsal line. And the angle formed by this is called as the kite angle, and there is a hind foot less than varus, and normal degree of this is 25 to 40 degree of this angle. When the angle increases, it means the forefoot is laterally directed or deviated lateral side, so it increases the angle. When this kite angle increases in the AP view, which is mostly the weight-bearing views. So it indicates increase in the kite angle, which is the metatarsal calcaneal and metatarsal talar angle. Kite angle, it will increase in the pes plano-valgus deformity or congenital vertical talus. If you take an X-ray, weight-bearing X-ray, lateral view, it produces a Mary's angle, and Mary's angle is the axis of the first metatarsal with the axis of the talus. So this is the axis of the talus, which is, it makes an angle that is called first metatarsal, first metatarsal angle, line drawn through the axis of the talus and axis of the first metatarsal. This indicates an angle which is called Mary's angle. Mary's angle usually acceptable is 0 to 4 degree or more than 4 degree. If the foot goes in the cavus position or lower position and it maintains an arch, then it increases the angle. When angle is increased, Mary's angle, it means there is normal foot. But when the Mary's angle in mild deformity less than 15 degree, if this axis matches near towards the metatarsal axis angle, then it produces a flatness, and this flatness is indicated by the Mary's angle. And moderate deformity when the angle is more than 15 to 30 degree, and angle is severe when 30 degree and more 30 degree. It means the verticality of talus will produce the power angle. So here left pes splenovalgus 12 degrees y, and Mary's angle pes splenovalgus is left on 20 degree. On the right side it is the 10 degrees. So do you any classification regarding the congenital vertical talus, and mostly it is based on the pathoanatomy. Coleman's classification is most commonly used, in which the type 1 is congenital vertical, both talonavicular and calcaneocuboidum, both are dislocated and it is severe deformity, then it is called type 1. If there is a only isolated talonavicular dislocation, then it is called type 2. And distinction is very important because it indicate about rigidity of the congenital vertical talus. Then there is the Schoenecker-Agata classification. They are divided in 3 groups, and idiopathic type 1, and there is no associated diagnosis other deformity along with the idiopathic deformity. Then type 2, when it is associated with other congenital abnormalities but no neurodeficit. And group 3 is associated with the congenital deformity and the neurogenic disorders. Then another classification is Hamanishi's classification. They are divided in the 5 groups, and it is mostly type 1, there are neural tube defect or spinal deformity. And when the associated neuromuscular disorders, then it is called type 2. If there is a malformation syndromes like arthrogryposis congenita, it is called type 3. If there is a chromosomal abnormalities, it is called 4. And type 5 is idiopathic when the reason is not known. Is there any differential diagnosis for congenital vertical talus? Yes, commonly there are 2 or 3 deformities which produce pes spleno congenital vertical talus. The variants are rigid pes spleno deformity, where navicular is never reduced on the plantar flexion view. It continues to have a vertical talus. Then there is a pes spleno-flexus deformity, and navicular may reduce while there is a plantar flexion like this. And in between these two, flexus and rigidus, there is a oblique talus deformity, but is less severe than the rigidus deformity. You can reduce it, but it do not stays reduced when you leave the hand. So in axis of the plantar flexion, you can recognize these 2 deformity, and this is mostly deformity which is associated with the neuromuscular disorders or with the hyperlaxity syndromes. So oblique talus, which is very common, we can define it, the deformity that is somewhere between the severe and form of the pes plus flexus and rigidus deformity. It differs from congenital vertical pes valgus by absence of dislocation of talonavicular joint on plantar flexion. Maintaining these distinctions prevent the diagnosis of congenital vertical pes valgus. And additionally, better evaluation of treatment for congenital vertical pes valgus results, because those cases there is a good prognosis and better response to non-surgical treatment. This is it means the obliquus talus has much better prognosis, and also the pes spleno-valgus deformity has the good deformity. Again, radiologically, when pes congenital vertical rigidus, AP view shows increased kite angle when you do here first metatarsal with the talus, and on the lateral view decreased Mary's angle. and on lateral flexion view, fixed forefoot dorsal dislocation, and in the dorsal lateral views, fixed equinus dislocation of hind foot. But in pes plano flexus, head is palpable on the plantar surface on the medial side and correctable on the plantar view or plantar flexion and reducible talonavicular joint. And in the congenital oblique talus, the lateral radiograph of foot is in maximum plantar can reveal if navicular is reduced with the force. Here, very less force applied, this is more force applied, but it is reducible. So here is two examples of rigidus and oblique talus. Here you can find vertical talus here, axis. Even on plantar surface, they are not matching. And here is the dorsiflexion view. But in the oblique talus, when you reduce with the plantar flexion, they match each other with the first metatarsal. The talar axis matches with the first metatarsal axis. So these are two differences. But sometimes patients come to you with a late presentation. And when they are left untreated, more rigid deformity and adaptive changes of the flatness of the talus and develops there, and heel does not touch the ground as you can see here, and patient forces to bear weight on the talar head and produce a pressure source on the medial side, and the callosities develops on the head of the talus, and this is the X-ray. The disabilities in these children with the late presentation is the painful callosities which causes significant disability and awkward gait and difficulty in the balancing. They are not normal feet, so they are unbalanced feet, and later they need some support because of the painful callosities on the medial side or the talar head. And there is always a frequent shoe wear and tear in the shoes because of this verticality and the pressure sore and the callosities. There is differential diagnosis, two most important differential diagnosis. One, know about what is the calcaneovalgus foot. Here you can find not a rocker bottom, but foot is dorsiflex and it is like a planus foot instead of rocker bottom. The foot is dorsiflex to such a degree of dorsal surface of foot touching the anterior surface of the tibia. And most of the time, sometimes you can find these children which have a physiological type of deformity because of the late development of the taloachilles tendon. Once the Achilles tendon have the good forces and with the good physiotherapy, they become normal. While in other cases, there is a posterior medial bowing of the tibia, and it shows there is a vertical there is a valgus deformity, but it is mostly because of the bow tibia, which is in anterior-posterior direction. So these are two important differential diagnoses one should know. So in calcaneovalgus versus vertical talus, the foot is dorsiflexed at the mid-tarsal joint, but creating a palpable gap dorsally between the navicular, where the talar neck should be felt normally. This gap can be helpful in distinguishing the congenital vertical talus from the more common calcaneovalgus foot. Upon plantar flexion, the congenital vertical talus foot gap remains there, but not in the calcaneovalgus deformity. I can say, so here when you feel it, there is a, because of the dorsolateral dislocation of the navicular joint, you find a palpable gap. But when you plantar flex, this gap persists. While in pes plano deformity, there is no gap felt on the dorsolateral surface. So this is the differential feature in the pes plano valgus and congenital vertical talus. So how to treat these? There are many methods of treatment depending on the age of the patient, and the goal of treatment are to restore and maintain normal anatomical relationships between the talus, navicular and the calcaneus. The axis of these should match with the first metatarsal, and axis of calcaneus should match with the fourth metatarsal. And object is to provide the normal weight distribution, because when it become late, there is unbalanced gait and backward gait is there, and there is a callosity. So our objective is to reduce the talocalcaneal and talonavicular joints in normal position to achieve, so that there is a good distribution of weight on the plantar surface. Methods of the treatment are many. Initially, we can do the manipulation and casting from when we start within 1 week or 2 weeks of the age. But when child become of the higher age in the months, then there is a manipulation and casting, and minimal invasive surgery is usually required. And I will discuss how this minimal invasive surgery can reduce after manipulation and castings. But when the child become over 1 year and 18 months and 2 years, usually the open reduction along with the tendon transfer is required. But in older age case, as I already shown you, here the mostly osteotomy and fusions are required. So I can say the treatment is tailored according to severity of the deformity and age of the presentation when patient comes to you. There is multiple literatures are available regarding serial manipulation casting. Traditionally, used methods of improving deformity and thereby decreasing the compensability of inevitable extensive soft tissue release. It means when you are doing early manipulation and casting, the lateral structure or dorsolateral structure of is stretched, so you may not need in surgery or extensive surgery in the later age groups. Unlike casting of the clubfoot, serial casting for vertical talus has been used until recently. Most recently, different methods of the vertical talus, like reverse clubfoot posterior casting, is used, and serial casting with minimal invasive surgery in the later age group has been traditionally used for the excellent correction, but of the short-term results. But long-term results are also available, which show good serial manipulation, casting, and minimal invasive surgery in resistant cases gives the good results. So mostly it is a drops reverse Ponseti technique is used, and there are multiple features I will discuss along with the crucial steps, which are mostly reverse Ponseti casting. So serial manipulation and casting techniques is called reverse Ponseti techniques, most commonly used, and it is called Dobbs method of the serial manipulation. Here, all the components of deformity are corrected simultaneously as we do in the clubfoot, with exception of the hindfoot equinus correction, which is corrected in the last, as we say in the clubfoot deformity. Because the clubfoot end in this deformity, tango achilles has more fibrous tissue as compared to cellular tissue. Therefore, we have to reduce the talonavicular joint first, and later the Achilles tenotomy. The methodology is similar to the Ponseti method, and it is the reverse method. Position and preparation are same as for the clubfoot deformity. And the crucial step is in the clubfoot, we palpate the head of talus on the lateral side. Here we have to palpate and locate the head of talus on the medial side, because all the manipulation concentrate on the position of the talus, and we have to stabilize this talus and reduce the forefoot and the midfoot over the talus, and lastly when we do the Achilles correction, it gets reduced. So the crucial step is the talar head location, and the foot is then stretched in plantar flexion and inversion while counter pressure is applied on the medial side of the talus. You maintain the pressure on the medial side over the talar head, and the manipulate reversely as compared to clubfoot. In clubfoot, you reverse on this way, and you have to keep your thumb on the talar head on the lateral side, because it is palpable on the lateral side. Here it is palpable on the medial side, and you manipulate in the reverse way by stabilizing the talus from the plantar surface and the medial position. Here you are stabilizing, and the pressure is exerted to stretch the dorsolateral structure as compared in the clubfoot, the medial structure, which are shortened. So here is the detail of the procedure. Here you are maintaining the talar head after locating the talar head, and then manipulating the forefoot and dorsolateral structures towards the medial side. This photo again shows about this. So illustration of direction of the force applied to reduce the vertical talus deformity. Foot is stretched into plantar flexion, inversion, while counter pressure is applied by the thumb on the medial head aspect plantar and medial aspect of the thumb. Here is the location. So there is a successive serial plaster casting with weekly serial casting and manipulation and successive cut. Foot is brought in the more equinus position, hind foot towards the varus, and forefoot in maximum plaster flexion and inversion as compared to the clubfoot towards the lateral side. So ensure adequate stretching of the dorsolateral contracted structure, capsule, joint, skin, and tendon as well. So this is the lateral side of the forefoot, and this is the medial side of the forefoot. You have to fix the talus on the medial side and stretch the dorsolateral structure by the reverse ponsity, serial manipulation, and casting. So the cast is first applied below knee, as we already do, and here there is a plantar flexion, and arch is maintained by pressing the over the head of the tailor and stretching the lateral structure. First you keep the plaster below knee joint, and later you have to extend the plaster above knee joint to keep the rotation of the foot, to maintain the rotation of foot in the normal position, in the plantar flexion and the inversion position. But you should not give the constant pressure at any side. If you give the constant pressure, this will produce a pressure sore. So you have, while keeping the pressure, you have to move your thumb on the medial side continuously so that it should not produce a pressure sore. So plaster is again changed weekly, and 4 to 6 casts are usually required. And before final cast, you have to do percutaneous sternotomy, and evaluation can be done by the Tomba Kamba and the already discussed the radiological exercises. In case of failures, how to manage the resistant cases in non-walking children when the age is more than 4 months, 5 months or the 1 year age group, how to proceed in these cases. So minimum, Dobbs has also given a technique of mini invasive approach. In resistant cases, after initial correction with the reverse ponsity manipulation and casting, a mini invasive approach is used to reduce the talonavicular joint, and reduction is again stabilized with the K-wire. An indication mostly is failure to achieve talonavicular joint reduction, and in resistant cases when the trauma and axis is more than 30 degrees. Here it is a mini open technique. A small medial incision is given here on the when already you have reduced and stretched the lateral structures and case resistance. After 4 or 5 casts, you give a mini incision over the talar head in the base of the first metatarsal or navicular. You reduce this joint, and sometimes you need an elevator to reduce the navicular downward and observing the palpating the talar head, and then you insert a K-wire through the talar head and bring it down posteriorly, and then reduce the talonavicular joint by keeping the talus upward and the the navicular on the plantar and medial side, and then proceed with the K-wire through the talonavicular joint. This is just a 2 centimeter incision, and when you do this, and then you do the Achilles sternotomy. Here is the again a detailed method. You reduce initially a talonavicular joint, over reduce, pass a K-wire through the talar head retrogradely, and then reduce the navicular. And once you reduce the navicular, pass the K-wire there, and once you achieve the correction, you do the tendo-Achilles lengthening, which is also a percutaneous strategy. Sometimes the people use a joystick technique. So joystick technique, after reduction, and you do the mini incision and reduce the talonavicular joint, and you pass a K-wire through the talus, and then joystically do the plantar flexion of the talus and reduce the navicular here, and then pass the antegrade method of the talonavicular wire. That is called joystick technique, and all these procedures had to be done in general anesthesia. What you do when the age is over 2 years? Is there in need of any additional procedure? Yes, I would say there is need of an additional procedure when child is more than 18 months. In patient older than 18 months and 2 years, at the time of reduction, talonavicular joint is reduced, and then tibialis anterior tendon is also transferred to dorsal aspect of the neck of the talus to provide a dynamic internal splint and dynamic corrective force, that is called internal splint or talonavicular. In clubfoot, you transfer the tibialis anterior on the lateral cuneiform, and here and you need to divide the forces toward the center of the clubfoot. But here you transfer the tibialis anterior through the neck of the talus so that it can lift the neck of talus in the plantar. If plantar flexion is limited, this is indication. If plantar flexion is limited to 25 degree as assessed on a fractional lengthening of extensor digitorum communis is also needed. So initially you do the transfer of the anterior tibial tendon through the neck of the talus and some modification of as well to keep the talus in the horizontal position, in the plantigrade position. And secondly, if the plantar flexion is less than 25 degree, it means there is a contracture of extensor digitorum communis. So you have to do fractional lengthening of an additional incision at the mid leg, and you do the fractional lengthening of the extensor digitorum communis. And if you do, even after this, sometimes you find resistance cases, or when the forefoot adduction is less than 10 degrees, it is not going to the 0 degree, then you also need a fractional lengthening of the peroneal tendon, because these are the structures which are tight on the dorsolateral surface. You have stretches the skin and you have manipulated the forefoot, and forefoot adduction is less than 10 degree or plantar flexion less than 25 degree, you need an additional procedure because to release the tightening of extensor digitorum communis and the peronei. So peronei again a fractional lengthening at the musculotendinal junction with an additional incision in that compartment on the anterolateral surface of the tibia. So it means you need a transfer of the anterior tibial tendon, tibialis anterior, then transfer to the neck of the talus. Sometimes when you do the open reduction, you may not need to pass through the neck of the talus, but anteromedial capsule, you have to attach the anteromedial capsule of the you have reduced talus, so that again produce a dorsal produce a lateral splintage to keep the head of the talus dorsally. And sometimes the tibialis posterior, this is again a tibialis anterior transfer through the neck, and here is the tibialis posterior tendon again is inserted tibialis posterior through the inferior capsule and the inferior-medial capsule, and then the reduced K-wire already you have done with the K-wire. So post-operative protocol in DOPS is the after tenotomy above knee cast. Again, cast is changed after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and mold is made of the solid AFO. It means the solid AFO should be used or till the patient is started walking. In the early stages, in the younger age group, we use a reverse rod of the killer foot shoes, and the direction of killer foot plantar surface toward the medially. In the club foot we keep laterally directed, externally rotated, but in the vertical talus we keep medially or internal rotated shoes, and rod is conveys towards the page side. In the club foot you keep the rod like this, but here the rod is directed so that it can maintain the dorsiflexion of the vertical talus. And then once a good correction achieved, you can use the AFO up to the walking age group. So here is the mini invasive technique. Again, it is shown a location of the incision, reduction of the navicular and talus, passing the K-wire, and Kushner wire is passed, and this is the example of the later follow-up, shows absolutely normal foot. Literature review shows unlike club foot, essentially 100% of vertical talus deformity have not been fully corrected with the cast immobilized alone. They require sometimes a major surgery when there is a recurrence in the later stage group and when the patient comes to the older age group. Again, another says the serial cast treatment of foot is viewed as a beneficial for stretching the soft tissue in later age groups. Where they comes to you after the walking age group, you have to stretch the lesser structure so that the complexity of operation is reduced. It feels there is no source or no disruption of skin lateral side when you do the multiple procedures. Congenital vertical talus in the walking age group over the 2 years age. They are how to manage this case when they comes to the age of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and there is a significant contractures on the anterolateral surface with the peronei and the dorsal surface. Other tendons are the shortened on their side, and you need multiple procedure are there. And this is again type of procedure is tailored according to age of the patient, severity of the deformity, complexity of the associated disorder, and the preference of the surgeon. Approaches are mostly two: a triple incision single event operation or double incision staged procedure. In the double staged procedure, initially the medial and lateral structures are done, and the second incision a lateral stage is given for the Achilles lengthening. To traditional surgical treatment versus age groups, if children are less than 3 years, open reduction, soft tissue release, realignment, talonavicular joint, tendon lengthening, and K-wire fixation. The procedure can be one stage or two stage procedure. But if here you do the transfer of tibialis anterior, transfer of the already we have discussed the lengthening of the peroneal. But if child is over 3 years, there is extensive soft tissue release, tendon lengthening, K-wire fixation, and the tendon transfer. If child is over 4 years and there is a recurrent deformity, most of the time naviculectomy is released along with the extensive soft tissue releases and tendon transfers. But over the age of 5 or 10 years when they come, there is a subtalar or triple orthosis procedure. Triple orthosis has to be done. Literature review said the exact upper age limit for successful open reduction is not known. If the age is over 3 years, some children require excision of the navicular, and if the age is more than 3 years, there is also concern that the untreated vertical talus, there is a permanent deformity anterior and mid-tarsal facets. If age is more than 4 years, there is not sufficient remodeling capacity there, articular surfaces, open reduction, navicular joint reduction, medial column shortening, and lateral column lengthening is done. It means you have to do lateral column lengthening by osteotomy of the calcaneum or the calcaneocuboid joint, and the shortening on the medial side by naviculectomy and the capsulodesis. But if age is more than 4 and 8 years, either a primary or recurrent deformity can be treated with the open reduction combined with the extra-articular arthrodesis, which mostly we do subtalar fusions. These patients that are older than 8 years often require a triple arthrodesis because already there is stiffer joints in the subtalar and mid-tarsal joints. There are one-stage procedure and two-stage procedure. There are three components in the one-stage procedure. First step is reduction of talonavicular joint, release and transfer of tibialis tendon to the neck, and release of the tibionavicular joint, talonavicular joint, and reduction is with the K-wire, which already we have discussed. Second step is the lateral lengthening toe extensor and peroneal, and reduction of calcaneonavicular joint if reduced, to improve the ankle plantar flexion. And the third step is again the TA lengthening and posterior capsulotomy, and this posterior ankle joint is as we do in the club foot. So the first step is the medial with the tendon transfer. Second step is the lateral side, toe extensors are lengthening, and third step the posterior one. Here it shows the example how the incisions are given, a curved incision to reduce the talonavicular joint on the medial side, and the total peritalar reduction, subtalar joint capsulotomies on the medial side. Then you have to open by another incision on lateral side to reduce the cuboid and talar and the calcaneocuboid joints, and reduce the dorsal structure as well. But sometimes you need a tendon lengthening as well and the anterior tibial transfer, lastly when you do through the neck, or when you have done the reduction here, you can transfer the tibialis anterior in the inferior and the medial capsule, and sometimes also a tibialis posterior is attached on the posterior medial neck here. When you do the lateral side, you can need a peroneal lengthening, or you could do the fractional lengthening at the leg side. And then third incision is in posterior capsulotomy of the ankle and lengthening of the tato Achilles in the third. So one stage reconstruction, three incision. Again, we already discussed these, which joint are lengthening over deltoid ligament and the dorsolateral correction, calcaneocuboid inspection, and reduce posterior TA, and the posterior capsulotomy has to be done. This is the example of the one stage procedure by Cincinnati method, modified Cincinnati method. And the tibialis anterior transfer, different tech here is the tibialis anterior transferred from the here. Tibialis anterior transfer is done here through the neck, and then the tibialis posterior is attached on the inferior medial at the talar neck. So here is the example after these medial corrections and the talo Achilles lengthening and capsulotomy. You place a K-wire which may be passed retrogradely or antegrade from the talar head, reduce the talonavicular joint and calcaneocuboid joint, and this is the perioperative, and this is the postoperative X-ray, and the later stage good reduction is already achieved, and good shape of the feet with the arch is maintained. So in one stage, Cincinnati incision is also used. So Cincinnati extensive incision. Cincinnati incision usually ends here, but here you have to increase the incision up to the mid-tarsal joint to the anterolateral surface, anteromedial surface of talocalcaneum, and the same procedure has to be done through this Cincinnati incision. This is example details of the Cincinnati incision. The literature modified Cincinnati approach is usually little bit difficult, spheres are limited, and it produces certain problems of adherence of the soft tissue damage. Then there are two-stage approach. In the first stage, you do anterolateral release of the all structures, tendon, tibialis anterior, tibialis posterior tendon transfers through first stage. In second stage under GA, you do the posterior release and the contractures of the tendo-Achilles and the posterior capsular knee, peroneal length you have to do. This is post-reduction maintenance by the K-wire, and then plaster is applied over the knee joint, and long-term outcome disorder should be recognized at the birth and treated before the age of 2 years. You will find a good results. A more aggressive treatment is required when the child comes to you after 2 years. Both approaches have a good short-term results, and single incision dorsal approach is much better than the two incision or the approach. Complication, there are complication of the wound necrosis, under correction of the deformity, stiffness of ankle and the subtalar joint when you damage the cartilage, eventual need for multiple operative procedures of triple arthrodesis in the recurrence cases, and when child is reported after 3 to 5 years of the age. Long-term outcome complication may be degenerative arthritis when the patient comes to the late stage. So here is the review regarding the less than 2 years stage, no tubal defect, there is a no defect, then the release of the lengthening and the fixation of the procedure. If results is good, treatment ends. If results are not good, recurrence of the release the tendon and transverse procedure, results is good again, then it is the normal results. If results are poor, you have to go for the naviculectomy. And after naviculectomy, if results are good, there is an end of therapy. If results are poor, then you can do the subtalar arthrodesis and you can find the good results. If the child comes over 24 months of age, release with the tendon procedure, tendon transfers. If the results are good, there is an end of therapy. If results are poor, again there is a naviculectomy and tendon transfers. If after this, if results are good, the end of therapy. If results are poor, you need a triple arthrodesis and the subtalar fusions. These are the references from which I made this lecture, and thank you very much for your patience.
How do we differentiate from oblique talus and splenoflexus?
As in the description I already discussed with, there are two groups of differential diagnosis. One is the congenital vertical talus, in which you will find talus is vertical, it is failed on the medial and the plantar surface, and when you plantar flex the forefoot, it is usually not reduced, and you will feel a gap in the between the tibia and the forefoot. You will not feel the head of the talus as in the reduced talonavicular joint. But when there is a pes splenovalgus deformity or oblique talus, it is usually a type of flexus deformity and like a pes splenovalgus. In pes splenovalgus, talonavicular joint is usually reduced, which commonly we say a flat foot deformity. And the oblique talus, when you reduce this, it produces little bit of the flat foot deformity. And when you feel clinically dorsolaterally, the gap which is felt in the congenital vertical talus rigidus, this gap is felt in rigidus, but this gap you will not find in the oblique talus at the dorsomedial surface, because the talonavicular joint is reduced and it will produce like a flat foot deformity. So I can say pes splenovalgus and obliquus deformity, you cannot feel the gap between the tibia and the forefoot, which is commonly felt in the congenital vertical talus rigidus.
Thank you, sir.